Nowcast just got started and we want to have a taped version of this. So this meeting is to address the SA Tomorrow regional or the sub-area plans and to talk about your neighborhood plans and how you can prepare for your participation in this.
Okay. And I was just going over the people that participated in the Midtown planning team. Lou Fox was also there as outside representative. Tobin Hill had two, Tobin Hill Business Associations was there also, and the Peace and Justice Center was represented by Graciela. So it's a diverse group. Your group will be different depending on what's in the area that you're going to be talking about. We had also represented from Whitting Museum, the executive director of Whitting, and a big part of Mahncke Park, or excuse me, not Mahncke Park, of the area for us is that big park over there. So we had a representative from the Brackenridge Conservancy also was on the team. Questions on the membership? Membership. Going to go on. So. Those were on the dark purple. Now, sub-area plans are based on these categories at various times during, and as a member of the team, and I always shared it with the board, I represented, and that's, you have to remember when you're representing somebody, you've got to keep them informed. And so I would always share documentation I received from the city with my board, with the Mahncke Park board, and these were the categories that we would see pop up at various times. We'd be talking about jobs and economic development. These are the cogent areas that are in the comprehensive plan. Talked about transportation. We'll come back to that in a minute. Parks and open space. We looked at the community health and wellness, because that's the sustainability of the city is based on, in part, on that. Land use, and land use is just now, we're just getting to that part of the comprehensive plan. Garrett's been having, we've been very fortunate in the meeting programmer for us. Garrett Phillips has been very available to the whole of Mahncke Park. He shows up. He showed up every other month usually to give an update from his perspective. And for the last month's meeting and this meeting, he's participating in our neighborhood organization meeting because we're breaking into small discussion groups and coming back we're talking about an action plan, which is the last part of the comprehensive plan for the sub area. So we're working on the action plan right now, and we've been discussing land use. Land use has caused some concern because land use is the overlay for zoning, and we'll talk about it later in the meeting. There is a meeting on Wednesday of the Comprehensive Plan Committee, and one of our colleagues noticed that one of the topics is land use, and a discussion which we can't see yet, that it's not available out there for us to see what is going to be talked about specifically, but they're going to be talking about what we're using in the sub-plan, and we'll be doing that on Tuesday night, and then on Wednesday night, or Wednesday in the afternoon, we'll be looking at what they're presenting to the city council people on the committee. next, want to talk about who's coming up next, who's going to be receiving invitations, maybe. I mean,
I can go next door.
I was gonna.
just push the space
Go
bar.
back to the map.
Yeah. This is a different map, that the dark areas, excuse me, not the dark areas, the two lighter areas are in the east. If you push the space bar again, this will give us the participants that the city had planned to invite for the next sub-regional planning. East community area, southwest, southeast, and that includes Highland, if I remember right. Port San Antonio, then out north, and northeast, where 410 and come together in that business hub out there. And then on the south side, Texas A&M Regional Center in that area to the south.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
May I ask you, on the
Got some
previous
spelling
slide,
problems there.
Midtown has always confused me. What is Midtown? What are they included in it as Midtown for the first phase? What neighborhoods?
Midtown, the neighborhoods that were included were Tobin Hill, us, Westport Alliance, 5 Points.
And when you
And-
say us, who do you represent?
Mahncke Park.
Oh, thank you.
And those were the neighborhood organizations. Then you have, like I said, Breckenridge Park, because that's a big part of it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
And there was someone from the Tobin Hill business, because that's the Pearl. It's down on South Broadway, across from Westport. That area was included. And so, each of those are going to be different than we have. And I believe the neighborhood's own mixture will impact how you deal with the city on this and how you're organized. I think, okay, I'll be proud of Mahncke Park. We're well organized, I think. We've been organized for a long time. We have a history. And the board, last year, we have one of the other board members here, Steve's here, and we worked well together. We had 7 or 8 of us that were a team and worked together. And that's going to be important as you come up. Make that team, get somebody to help you. You don't know everything. Butch Hayes doesn't know everything. So I need to take things that we take back, like when we did the objectives, took the list back to the board. This is what they're suggesting. What do you want to do? And I had them work on it. We came up with what we collectively came up with for it and gave that to Garrett, and we talked about it at the one meeting. We also, when we were talking about, one of the topics was housing. When we were talking about housing, Steve led us and drew up a white paper for the city from Mahncke Park on affordable housing. And I presented that to the Housing Commission, to the Housing Task Force at one of their first meetings. And then also made sure every city council person had a copy of it, and the mayor also. So you've got to take a stand. If you want to be represented in what comes out for the final comp plan, you have to participate. You have to be there and make your, some of my colleagues on the committee were very, very reticent and talked rarely. When we asked for consensus, and that's a good point to remember, we operate in these teams by consensus. Not by, he doesn't go around and count votes or anything. It's how do you all feel? And I think the danger for all of us, and I'm including myself there, you don't want to get down in the weeds. The comprehensive plan's up here at 20,000 feet, looking at San Antonio. And whatever might be decided, it's a plan, it's a guide for the city, for the future. And we're very glad we have that, because Business people want to come here. They want to see what the city is going to be like in the future. Is it going to help them to come here? But too quickly sometimes you might drill down and be in the weeds, and we can't get there. Because you've got, well, Tobin Hill's different than Mahncke Park. Westport's a lot different. Everybody's different. And then the issues for the educational institutions are different than they are for the neighborhoods. Now, where we did see some collegiality, when you start talking about the Corridor Plan, and the Corridor Plan talks about transportation and how we're going to get into and out and around the city. The bus, whatever. Mayor Nuremberg in the last couple of weeks has put together a task force to deal with that again. I didn't call it a task force committee. And he's had recently in the last couple of days, a group he's pulled together to encourage 70,000 jobs in the next 2 years. You know, the whole reason for this is the phenomenal growth that San Antonio is having right now. How are we going to deal with all these people that are coming to San Antonio? And if he's going to get 70,000 jobs, my question when I heard him say that was, and where are they going to live? And where are they going to work? And hopefully not on South Broadway. We've got enough people ending up on South Broadway because we have over on Alamo Street, the Alamo Community College District is moving 500, 600 people to that little corner of Alamo and Broadway. And just a little bit down the street is going to be the headquarters for Human Credit, whatever that, yeah, credit union. Moving all of its headquarters down there. So already we see, and we know from some of the plans they talked about, and we all, and I've had separate meetings with some of my neighborhood groups, and I'll bring that up as a +2 that you have to do. But there is a plan in the Corridor Plan to make Broadway a boulevard from Mulberry South. And in doing that, in making it a boulevard, it would take away 2 lanes. We have 6 right now, and there's mornings when those 6 are full, and you can't move. And particularly if 281 gets blocked up, we know it's blocked up over in the neighborhood. Trying to pull out of Mahncke Park on Broadway is impossible because all the traffic from 281's on Broadway. And if you put all that employment down that area, and there's other people going downtown, and all the people living there at Pearl, that area.
We might want to move to these folks' plans. We're going to
Okay,
get started
sorry.
late. I'm sorry.
Well, we really don't care about Broadway, we want to know what's going on
Okay.
the south side.
No, and south side you have the corridor plan for Zarzamora and Southwest Frontier.
We're gonna have electric
No,
self-driving
no.
cars, so it really don't matter what we're gonna do with Broadway.
Right, that's the truth, and thank you. What can you do to help you in your plan and become knowledgeable? I've given you the website there, and what you'll find are all these attachments. Anything in blue, click on it and you get it.
We're going to send that out to you.
Okay. It's if you, that page has it also, I think. Very small, you can't see it. I'm in preparing for my meetings. I took time, and my recommendation is that you become, for example, with the comprehensive plan, because that drives the whole ship. Have some familiarity with it, so that when you have a specific topic you're concerned about, you know it, you've seen it in there, and then you can go to it and read what did the comprehensive plan say. But to get a picture of the planning and what's going to be encompassed in it, because it's there to take care of jobs, housing, wellness, and the general environment of the city. Know what's in the comprehensive plan. But more importantly, Go ahead, Ms. Spacer. It is important that you know your neighborhood plan. Know what you've got and what you want to protect. You have to have a good working knowledge, not just of your plan, but if it's an NCD or you have any kind of land use documents, those you have to know about before you start meeting with the other people. What is it that your neighborhood has felt? In the case of Mahncke Park, our plan was done in 2001. 2008, we had NCD, so we were always knowledgeable on that. And what has caused us to be spread kind of thin this year, we are also redoing our NCD. To do a revision of your NCD, you have to get your city council person to request a review. Review your, okay,
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't go back.
we can go there. Because you're going to talk about that.
Okay, so let's just talk quickly about, we've gotten a lot of concerns. I mean, obviously what you need to know is your neighborhood or community plan. Ours is the Midtown, and a lot of us know it backwards and forwards. You also need to start getting familiar with your comp plan. A lot of you are wondering in email, and I see on media, how did we get here? There's this fear about our neighborhood plans are gone. You're right. I mean, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Tier 1 started on this issue. And for a year, we lobbied and we worked and we struggled against the city and used our elected officials to represent us. And when they came out with it in May, we saw the version and pushed back hard. And through District 1, Trevino was the most sympathetic at the time, and he helped put forth proposals that we had made. Even after that, up to the night before the adoption, Tier 1 was still pushing, and we were able to get language that protects neighborhoods. As you're going into this, even though we were told straight up to our faces that the neighborhood plans would survive, they didn't mean they'd survive the way we know them now. They're going to survive as a part of a larger document. That's why it's important for you all to have your neighborhood plans and know them as you walk in. But what we were able to do, and what wouldn't have been there had we not pushed, Tier 1 pushed, is we have neighborhood-friendly language now. We are now, the reason why neighborhoods are on these implementation committees, or these formation committees, is because we got language inserted that said, one of the stakeholders that has to be at the table is neighborhoods, neighborhood leadership or neighborhood residents. Because they were saying, well, a developer is a resident. Yeah, I mean, that's it. Someone actually told us that. So,
Residents of Chicago.
yeah, right. Well, they're residents of Chicago, but they're residents somewhere. So these are sections, and again, if you put your email, you will get a copy of this. We got sections. All of these sections are sections that if you look them up as you go into these meetings, you will have neighborhood-friendly language to use. It either says, this is good except where it causes stress on a neighborhood, or that kind of language that you should know so that you have the most effective weapon of all is to protect your neighborhood is the document itself. That's the argument the city will pay attention. So Councilman Trevino, I want to give him his props. He's the one that really listened to us and made those changes even the night before. The plan was adopted in 2016. Anyone who feels like, well, we need to fight for neighborhood plans, that train left the station. It's in Pittsburgh by now. That's just not an argument that's going to hold up. The way you protect your neighborhood plan is that you participate in the sub-area plans, the things that Butch is talking about, and come armed with knowledge. So two things. In fact, one of the guiding principles, Trevino used it the other day in a meeting when they were saying about STRs, when they were saying, well, we should let STRs be everywhere. He said the first guiding principle in this document, you're welcome, from Tier 1, is maintain the character and integrity of existing San Antonio neighborhoods. The other one is that we got at the very last minute. While the comp plan is an umbrella policy and planning document with citywide implications, it does not alter or negate our existing neighborhood community plans. it's gone, that's gone. We got that in there, but it's been, effectively ignored. So that's just a little bit about the history and your neighborhood plans and what's going to happen with them and how you can continue to have your neighborhood, what's important in your neighborhood plans in the future.
The other question, so in
Yeah.
listening to, about Mahncke Park and about the first region, how is that going to, do we know what these decisions, even though you're making it for this midtown, how these initial decisions are then going to impact all of us down the line, like land use? Once you do your land use, it's going to be passed from Region 1, which is going to be our land use down the line. But we have no input.
Well, I would know, when it comes out, read their, whatever yours is, if you're part of a regional center, if you're part of a community area, look at the plans that are being drawn up now. Because what the city will want to do is have consistency. I mean, that's the truth. And if you feel like that's not going to work for your neighborhood, then you should be looking about ways that you can change that when it's your turn. Yes, sir.
I just want to point out that we've gone through all of what you are saying in the Eastern Triangle Plan. This is our plan that was adopted in 2009, and we're comprised of 16 neighborhood associations, and we cover 21 square miles. The difference is that we incorporated our implementation and management plan, and for any changes to be made without our consent to any portion of the Eastern Triangle, we will be able to sue whoever the responsible party is in trying to change our Eastern Triangle plan.
So at the end, we're going to have community discussion.
Yes, but what I want to do is offer the leadership, your steering committee, any expertise that we have, because we have gone through all of this, and here is the map of,
Okay, well, thank
give
you.
you that.
Okay.
So that way you know, because we've been through it, and we know that collective neighborhood associations coming together have more influence and power and voting ability to go ahead and implement changes that you want.
Thank you, sir.
So-
We'll finish this conversation. But what I want,
I'm gonna have to leave, but I'm gonna-
okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you
well,
very
we'll
much,
contact
and
you.
but
Yeah.
you both bring up a good point. An excellent point that is incumbent upon all of us as citizens of San Antonio, but also much more when you become part of the planning process. Pay attention to what's going on in city council. Go out to Legistar and see what meetings are coming up, and you can register to be notified, for example, from developmental services on permits that are pulled or are been requested, and those pulled to do any demolition in your neighborhood. Get on their information cycle so that you know what your neighbors are doing and planning. And we can't say, and get back to the original question here, Mahncke Park and the north, we are not done yet with, we've got 3 more meetings of Midtown. And in those 3 meetings, we'll be coming up with our action plan. We'll be looking at land use. So what's the impact going to be on you? And ask me that question in August, because we'll see what the plan is. It's to go to City Council in August. But I want to make one important point, I think. A plan is a plan. When do you have to be there in the audience to really let your feelings be known?
Before they vote.
Before they vote. It has to be turned into an ordinance. They can't spend money. They can't change your zoning without an ordinance. So you have another chance. This is a plan only. That's up here. In the weeds, when they start trimming your weeds, get there and show them how and what you need in your area. Okay, Steve?
Yes, would you address what do you think are the critical issues that are now appearing in the land use, which are part of the plan, which I understand from your presentation is coming up? What are the main issues?
The main issues are that they're trying to summarize, if that's a good way of putting it, and reduce the number of individual zoning categories. And then if you look at what I think they're going to, you'll see heavy use residential or mixed use residential, and then that's just a broader category, but it is so important that you go in and look at that definition because it identifies the old code that would be incorporated into that. It's like the corridor plan, which the plan was approved by City Council, but alert to all of you along any main thoroughfare. If they put in a station, a hub, up to a half mile out from that, there's special zoning that already exists in the UDC. It's already there. It's not something new. And so then it becomes, and we have a colleague that can talk to it better than I. Tony knows more about that special zoning, TOD zoning. Within a half mile of where that hub would be, they can change it to a 8-story home, so to speak. We need to be leery of that. And that went through City Council and didn't hear much balking. But now when it comes down to changing zoning as it did in Monte Vista, we have to be there. And I agree with the gentleman that was here. Collectively, and that's what Tier 1 is, collectively, we have held up that we gave the commission, planning commission, a nice big notebook when the corridor plan came up. And 4 or 5 of us talked at that meeting, and they delayed approval of that plan at that point and sent it back to them so that they could do some revisions. So you have to be watchful of what's going on in City Council, particularly Planning Committee, Zoning Committee, and I would say you have to be good friends, not loving friends, but good friends with your City Council person.
Oh, boy.
Oh,
I didn't say love.
sorry.
Good working relationship,
Oh, boy. I mean, sorry.
if you can.
Yeah, we'll work on that.
Okay, and 1 is 2. Yes,
Who are the planning organizers that we should invite to our meeting?
that's the person you'll be, the planning manager will be identified to you if you're asked to be on the committee.
In our neighborhood?
In the neighborhood. It too is coming up for approval on Wednesday, is the new contract for next year for the corporation. Now, understand that it's a planning group that runs these meetings with the city and San Antonio's planning staff. And you will have somebody that's a contact person.
So let me just jump in on that. On Wednesday at 4 o'clock, the Comprehensive Plan Committee is going to get a presentation by staff on the year 2 contract with the consultant that's been doing these, running these planning teams. And so if any of you are available or have folks in your neighborhoods that are available to attend that meeting, there's not a citizens to be heard component to that, but you'll get the first look at what some of these things are being discussed. Staff will give council, that council committee, which is a subcommittee of city council, a presentation on this consultant contract for the 2nd year. They're also going to discuss the planning process and do an update there. They're also going to discuss the SA 2040. So being at those meetings gives you the early on look at what's coming up. It also makes sure that our council people and the staff are on notice that we're watching, and that has been very effective for our neighborhood group. So I think
We gotta
keep things
move on.
moving, but are there any other questions on this slide in particular?
What was that date you just gave?
Wednesday at 4,
Wednesday.
I think it's at 4 PM, and we'll send that out. It's at the municipal building, and we'll make sure that that goes out to everybody so that you can attend that.
And
Any
forewarning,
questions?
because it was on neighborhood, Maine and Soledad are going to be closed. So.
Any
figure
other
out
question on what's
how
on
you're
this
coming
slide?
down.
I do.
One thing I want to say is that I'm on the Brooks team, and I find that some of the people they brought in to guide us are not from here. They have not the foggiest idea of what's going on. So here it's like the blind leading the.
And I think, Butch, if you forward that
We're
to,
gonna, here.
okay. Let's go beyond that to where you have the suggestions. I want to see if we can get to go ahead with that to the next slide. Oh, okay, well, maybe it was the previous slide. So, sorry, I'm sorry, this is a little bit of a different order than what I had seen. But where he talks about suggestions, what I've heard from one of the other people that was on a team is exactly that. They come with the academic knowledge of how to do this, but they don't come with the knowledge of the culture, the tradition, the history, the personality of your neighborhoods. And that's what's going to be your job when you're on the planning team, is to bring that into the conversation so that those considerations are also taken into account.
Yeah, my name is Cullen Jones, Dignity Hill. Without getting into the rabbit hole that I know we can all go into, each neighborhood is a little different. Having said that, my question to Cynthia and the rest of the steering committee, how can I go about making sure that I, as a resident, am contacted by this faceless entity? And that I'm not sure it will come through neighborhood leadership, to be honest.
Just say it won't come through negotiation.
I'm trying to be politically correct, but Lulu's spot
I
on.
don't have that.
So how can I make sure that I, as a concerned resident of my neighborhood, am able to track and watch this as an individual as opposed to being part of the NA?
So what I would do, I mean, and it's work. I mean, people, you know, this is a time-consuming endeavor. But you have to get on their website. You have to contact whoever the staff person is and say, I want to be on the mailing list. And if you find out you're not, you call again. And you call again. And you call again. The thing with the city, what works, and if you're still not, and you go above that person, maybe don't wait till the third time. The second time you go above that person and say, I've asked, or go to a public meeting. Go to Citizens to be Heard or to a committee meeting and say, I've asked twice to be on a mailing list and I'm not. If this is an inclusive and transparent
Get on the
process,
mailing list.
you have to make it public and you have to be persistent.
And you can go out right now on that San Antonio Tomorrow site and get on their mailing list right now, because they do send out things periodically.
Staff of who?
So a lot of times, like Garrett Phillips is the Midtown, Garrett Phillips is the person who's in charge of the Midtown. There's always a staff person besides the out-of-town consultants that, you know.
So I'd be looking for staff
Yes.
assigned to Near East Side or whatever it's
That's
called.
right. Or call the planning department and say, who
Planning.
is the person that's in charge of the Near East Side? Who's it going to be? What is their email address? We'd like to start saying informed.
Okay.
Because you'll have a consultant and somebody else.
Yeah.
And challenge them on the language they use in the meeting if you don't understand what it is. That's how you learn. Because they are coming from an academic planning background, and they have their own language. You know, and you need to know what design form is. What does that mean when you talk about the neighborhood? I know what we want in design related to our NCD, but what are they talking about? What do they mean? Okay, let's have the panel members come up. Ricky? I'm going to sit down.
I think my question might be a nice segue for Brady's
Okay, Brady or Ricky?
experience.
Or me, I'm still. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
My name is Brady Alexander. I represent the Hot Wells Mission Reach Neighborhood Association. We're the association along the river, including Hot Wells Motel, also the State Hospital, north of Brooks to South Cross. East boundary is New Braunfels. We have been involved in the Brooks area plan, and I would like to tell you a story about that that unfortunately has some similarities with other individuals I've talked with dealing with the city in this plan and other plans. Basically, a year ago, the Brooks Master Plan Committee was started. 4 months prior to that, the president of Hot Wells resigned, and I took over from them, updated it with the city, etc. We were never asked if we wanted to be included in Brooks. Correspondence never occurred. I found out through the grapevine that they were looking for representation in this area. They could not contact us. According to them, they called the ex-president, played phone tag, etc. We never changed our email address, and correspondence was never through an email. Then they said we had to contact District 3, who knew of the change in the organization, knows me personally, etc. They appointed a person that was on their bond committee to represent the Hot Wells area instead of going to the organization, and so we could solicit through our members who would represent us on there. When I contacted Rudy Nino, he basically lied to me on the phone about the deadline had passed. I had access to an email that the deadline was not for a couple more days. So we went back and forth, etc., and I made an issue of it. Sometimes it takes that. Sometimes it takes a foot in the door to get something done. And I went and got Bridget White, his boss, finally sent us an email inviting us after we had demanded to be on there. At that point, went to the members and asked, would anybody like to represent? If not, I will. We had a volunteer that wanted to be on there, so placed her on there. She missed about half of the meetings, and part of the criteria we had was that she present to the members at our association meeting, and was not meeting those requirements. So approached her on that, and she made an email to me that said, I don't want to be on the Brooks planning team anymore, and I don't want to be a member of the neighborhood association. So at that point, we went to the city and said, we're selecting another representative. They did not allow us to change representation, even though other organizations have dropped out. Things have changed there. I've attended every meeting as a community person, not as a representative, and I can count on one hand the number of people from the area that lived in the area at those meetings, less than 5. There are more police and firemen on the Brooks planning team than neighborhood associations and members. It's kind of sad. So anyway, that's the way they deal with it. We brought up stuff. You want me to hurry up?
What are some tools that you would say? I mean, I think what we get out of what you've said is it's important to pick a representative that's going to report back to the neighborhood, to pick somebody that's familiar with your neighborhood plan and land use in general, to somebody that's going to be attend and share with the membership. So as a neighborhood association, you also have a responsibility in how you select your representative. Now, I know this, Brady, this was not your experience, but I was told that the neighborhoods can switch out the representative if that becomes necessary, and they can also have an alternate. So having said that, if the city tries to tell you you can't, you can push back on that, because I've been told by city staff that you can. So as opposed to what didn't work, what would you say that are some positive tools that people could use when they're interacting with the planning team? None. Okay.
Well,
no, I'm serious, and that's what this group is here for.
Basically, I'm here to offer solutions, but I'm identifying problems at the first here.
Okay,
And that is why my presentation is the way it is.
so now
You
you're on to
cannot-
the solutions.
The solution to it is not give up. If you give up, then they're going to decide for you. They may have already decided for you. We have seen instances, like some of the things that I just brought up, to where they designate. We're forcing you to do this. We have the power to do this. When input is asked, we spent one whole meeting, for instance, designating what land use on the state hospital, which is 4 acres. 2 meetings later, they came back and said, oh, we can't designate land use on state property. All for naught. Things have been left out. Maps are inaccurate. I didn't know Mission San Juan was behind my house until I saw one of their maps. The corridor plan was all off. Roosevelt was listed as Rockport Avenue, which is, by the way, 1604. So a lot of the people doing this are from out of state, out of town, and if you do, the template that they're using is the same as multiple cities, and I'm not going to get into it, but a little research on the internet would be very, very helpful on that. So yes, you have people that their qualifications are, they have a pulse and they fog a mirror. So sometimes they have to be led and shown what is wrong. But they will take the input that you give and only listen at times to what fits their predetermined plan and helps them cover their ass on their mistakes. Others will just be dropped out. Your land use and community plans will be used against you potentially. If something in that agrees with what they want, they will look at that and throw everything else out. So it is very frustrating, and obviously, as you can see, I'm not a sheeple. They don't herd me. But at those meetings, that is their technique, it seems, is to be more of herding than leading or listening. I've seen input where they say, no, that can't happen here. Well, why? Because this is going to be this and that. And I'll get to the questions here in a second.
Okay.
But they, and information does not flow back and forth. We find out about projects that are in the mill, and maybe there's some legal reasons, et cetera, the developer doesn't want out there. But it all should be above the table. And I strive for transparency. My opinion and the opinions of, I should say, the Neighborhood Association, we try to keep that very simple, clear, concise, and so it's not vague in any way. My suggestions would be to overcome these problems that I've just mentioned is to be very proactive. The office is down there at Flores, behind the Goodwill. Go down there and sit there till they meet with you. Do whatever it takes. Channel 4 is a good option too, if you have to. Continue to request from your city officials. If you don't have a good relationship with your council person, well, there's other ways of pushing it. Try to contact your zoning commissioner. We've contacted ours, who is present here, multiple times, and she has not met with us on these issues. At Brooks, I've never seen zoning commissioner there. I've never seen people show up on stuff. And there is so much going on right now with this. For instance, down here, the World Heritage, other items. They're hitting you all at once, so be prepared. Work with your neighbors. I have not been contacted by any neighborhood association in our area about working on this. For instance, we need to work better together, and that would be my advice on that. The membership of Brooks, for example, has more developmental interest and people that don't live in the area. To be on the planning team in your area, the neighborhood association must be within the boundary. But anybody else they can bring in to legitimize it, whether it be a developer, in our case, city staff, etc. So in our case, they're having a problem with getting people in there. So it's a numbers game, and they feel we put more bodies in there, it will legitimize it. Well, it's what the people say, not what the number. And also, by the way, they refuse to send us emails of the itinerary or the scheduling of meetings to the neighborhood association. They tell us that is your representative, we've designated it for you.
When you say they, who is they?
That'll be the planning team. Rudy Nino and Bridget White have told me that we're not going to send you info. I don't get on our Hot Wells email address itinerary for the next meeting. I cannot disseminate it to the members if they want to attend. So
Where does it go?
we have a disconnect. It doesn't go to
They
us.
have a designated representative and only that person.
That represents the neighborhood
We do not
association.
have a designated representative. They've designated our
Can I
representation on there.
insert something to maybe help you in that situation? And that is, you can go to the San Antonio Tomorrow site and get a listing of where the meetings are and what time it's out there.
Yes,
It's
it is.
available to you as the general public. It has to be. They can't keep the meetings down.
Right.
And
Go ahead, I'll take questions on this.
Why are we doing this anyway?
Well, it needs to be done. This needs to be done, but it needs to be done right, not by this date. So this is a good idea. It's good in theory. Whether it's good in practice, I don't know. It may get held up due to the lack of community input and the problems with it, with this contract going up to these consultants. I'm mentioning probably a worst case scenario, but I hope that you can learn from that and overcome these problems and these techniques the city, in my opinion, is using to marginalize the input of local community and get done what they want by only listening to or surrounding themselves with people that agree with their predetermined plan. And we need to have people that question, that say, hey, this is something you may have not looked at, and this is wrong, or this needs to be, we need to get it right. We need the maps to be accurate, we need to be what the community wants, etc.
That's what he brought
Okay,
up.
we better
Is
get.
that why are we in
Go
a
ahead.
hurry
Huh?
getting this done? He brought that up.
They've set a deadline, in my opinion,
Yeah.
they've set a deadline.
When these community plans took years, now we gotta get this done in months.
Because if you can get it done quickly, things don't get thought out that well if you do things in haste. This is my opinion of it, that they want it done, they're trying, it probably comes down from the city manager. If you
One
try-
more comment or question in the back there.
Hello, Manager Rodriguez. I'm on the West Side Land Use Planning Committee.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on there from the beginning. I also have served on the zoning commission. So some of the things that came up, I immediately saw things that, like he said, you really have to look into. What I recommend, if you're going to be on that thing, that's what I was doing right now, sorry that out of the room, but everyone needs to get a copy of the examples of permitted uses in the city of San Antonio. The reason for that, now this is a sheet for dummies, because when you go into the UDC,
It's a sheet for people that want to know.
yes. So each one tells you, like it says R6, R0, whatever, it tells you it allows for duplexes, triplexes,
Right.
and stuff. Another thing that people need to ask is, what do they mean by units per acre? A unit could be a quadplex. So we need to be very careful with that. So for sure we need this thing. Now, as for the people that attended my meeting, they were told, look at this, what is it, color chart? And now we're gonna look at this thing. This is how fast it went. And then we're gonna go ahead and tell you all a little bit about the classification for the Unified Development Code. And then they showed you a map. Now this is after they show you the same map over and over again that is not as specific. Now this is a very dangerous paper. Because in this one, they'll tell you the classifications are residential estate, that allows for R20, low density residential, that allows for R5, R6, neighborhood preservation. Urban low density residential allows from R3 all the way to TODs or MS18s. That's kind of tricky. So we really need to learn this paper. Now what you need to know what's going on here, you have to have the first paper with the samples on it to go one by one. So you're like, okay, so what am I looking at here?
You bring up a great point, and let me underscore it, because that document comes from the UDC.
Yes, sir.
That is the Bible, and it's going up for revision in 2020. We have to pay attention now, because they'll be revising it, and it can only be revised every 5 years.
And
That
here's
5 years
another
coming up in 2020.
that I asked point blank. I said, there is a neighborhood plan, a community plan in our area.
In your area.
There's 10 of us on that planning commission, and that planning committee, or whatever you want to call it, or a land use committee.
Mm-hmm.
There's a community plan that's 1/20th the size of the whole area we're now representing. That one community plan had over 200 individuals from that small community. We want commercial, we want this. What's scary is this thing allows in one part from residential all the way to commercial. So, since with a community plan, if something came in and it needed a plan amendment, you had to go to the planning commission. So that was one safeguard. This thing bypasses it. That's why we don't see any developers involved, because this is our safety guard.
And that thing that you keep saying, this thing, is that the new land use category?
This is actually a draft we're using for SA tomorrow land uses.
Okay.
As of February 5th, that's
Still a draft. So that's what y'all need to understand, is the city has these new land use categories
Yes.
that they're implementing. And these categories are now much broader. And so you could have what you have in your current plan, once they implement these new land use categories, is going to change all the different types of zonings that can go in that land use. And this whole thing is about land use. So I think the point, or what the takeaway is of some of this conversation, is that you need to also prep yourself by understanding the new land use categories and how that's going to affect zoning, because they're going to use those new land use categories on these new maps.
Yes, the other thing is that in the community plan, I've been asking, why is it a community plan that was much smaller, has so much information to give? For example, they would give you the income levels, the property appraisals and stuff. The income levels is very important, because what we're already seeing is when development does come in, for example, there's one that allows for 3-story to 5-story deals with mixed use on the bottom for commercial. But anyhow, when these things come in, the appraisal values go up. One example is 2 homes, same street, east, 1 west. Appraised value 2014 was approximately 43 in one and 45 on the other. 2017, one was appraised at 180 something thousand, the other at 200 and something thousand. The taxes on one of them was 735 because the individual was disabled and because of age. The other one, the taxes are $5,800. Now in our area, we have $40,000 homes. God forbid they go up that high. They're on fixed incomes, some of them are day-to-day laborers. They're gone. So that's why I requested that I wanted to see the income, a map. They said, well, it's a U.S. Census, and the U.S. Census no longer requires that statement. Well, that's wrong. There has to be a better way. We need to wait for, like he said, we need to wait for to have more information properly done as if it was a small community plan, because this is, because I did ask for blank, I said, is this like a community plan? He said, yes, but it's huge.
I need to hand this off to the next presenter. I just want to make one final comment. Need to look at what's going on and learn from the mistakes or the problems, say, that we have. Also look, this Tuesday coming up, there's a big rezoning going on in the World Heritage. That is the same mechanism that will be used in these community plans. I've asked point blank, will zoning be done against the wishes of the property owner? Yes, it will. So when these plans and the ideas they have, and there needs to be some continuity, streets treated the same, etc., but be very aware and watch how this is going on and learn from it. You may not be able to change it. It's going to be a snowball rolling down a hill. By the time it gets to you, it's going to be pretty big. But you can at least see what is coming down the road and what's going to hit you. And I have one other suggestion: buy your neighbor's property if you can, because the city, the way they're going, they're going to do whatever.
So yeah, that's a really good point you brought up, because when we did our 2009 neighborhood plan, unbeknownst to us and a bunch of people, we own a lot. They changed the lot to IDC zoning. Oh yeah. Without even telling us. So now we're fighting that. Thank God our zoning person is helping us with that. So you need to let your residents know that they're going to try to do this, and you can fight it, but you have to fight it as a group, because they don't care because they're doing it because that's what they think the direction of the neighborhood is going to go in.
What's the Tuesday meeting? I've got one question for you, and the cheat sheet that you're referring to, where did you find that?
It's on the city's website.
It's on what's his website? Okay.
I can give you this one because I can print it out. But in any case, one thing that I was told regarding that community input, what we were told point blank, because of, I guess the guy just finally said, you know what, yeah, you all are in trouble. a lot of people are gonna lose their homes. So he said, there's a directive I am following. I said, who gave that directive? I'm sorry I can't disclose that. It's my job to try to convince you to just go along with it. But you as a community, we have to, as a formality, have meetings.
Okay, Ricky,
That's the bottom line.
let's give her a chance to, thank you very much.
I'm Ricky Krusner. I live in Tobin Hill. I have not been a member of one of the planning teams. However,
You've been there all.
I have been to most of the meetings. First of all, I'd like to explain a little bit about, we have now neighborhood and community plans. That's what they're called. They are similar. They are relatively small areas. However, the SA Tomorrow Comprehensive Plan has put into effect much larger areas, and they're called regional centers and community centers. And you will hear about plans for these, but they're not talking about the neighborhood plans that you have, your individual neighborhoods or your individual community plans. These are plans that encompass usually several different communities and neighborhoods all together in one thing. It's very confusing, but that's what it is. And you have a neighborhood now. You will probably be tumped in with one or two other neighborhoods or communities in order to make these plans. So that's what we're talking about here. That's how Butch and from Mahncke Park and the Tobin Hill people ended up at the same meetings, because the Midtown Regional Center encompasses Tobin Hill, Mahncke Park, I think it's Westport, and 5 Points. Originally, it included also Beacon Hill and Monte Vista. Those two neighborhoods pulled out early on. But you can only pull out so far. Eventually, it's going to catch you. There's a schedule, 1-year plan for so many that are supposed to be done. Within 2 years, so many more are supposed to be done. Within 3 years, so many more are supposed to be done. So it's going to come to you eventually. There are regional, community, and community centers that are going to be planned. The neighborhood associations and community associations are going to be asked to supply a representative and a backup. It's a good idea to get somebody who really understands the neighborhood very well and who can speak, who can listen and understand and reply. Because otherwise you end up with someone who just sits there and never says anything, and all of this is going on around them. And you are going to have developers, you're going to have business people, you're going to have people who live in a neighborhood, you're going to have everybody there. And it depends on where you are as to how many different types of representatives you have. I'm afraid that with the Midtown Regional Center, we were pretty well, the neighborhood people were pretty well outnumbered by both the business and the development and all of the other entities that are interested and that are supposedly stakeholders in this. So you have one representative and one backup. I would urge you, the meetings go this way. Let's do that. The meetings go this way. There's usually a preliminary time, about a half hour, when they have the city supplies refreshments, and you can almost have supper. It usually starts around 6 o'clock in the evening. In a half hour, there's an introduction, and everybody who's there, says who they are. Then they review the results of the previous meeting or of a community meeting that might have happened. Community meetings are different from the planning meetings. Community meetings are these larger meetings where people are asked to come and things are presented to them, and then they're supposed to make comments. Then, in this particular one that I'm looking at, there was a review of housing and economic development issues done by the planner, the city people, and then there was a discussion of housing and economic development goals and strategies. I don't know about you, but if I'd been sitting in that meeting, I would have been completely flummoxed by then. It's too much information, and it's also an awful lot of information about things that you don't really understand, with language that you don't understand. So here is my advice to you. First of all, even if you are not the representative, attend the meetings. Attend the meetings so that you will know what's going on. Talk about it in your neighborhood meetings so that you can get other people, you can tell other people what's happening. Know your neighborhood plan. Read it. Know it. Understand it. Find out about your neighborhood demographics. Your neighborhood plan was put together at a certain time, and as the gentleman mentioned, the demographics that's reported in your neighborhood plan is from the U.S. Census. Censuses only happen every 10 years. So, if you can, find out about your neighborhood demographics. And know your neighborhood. Know how much of it is residential. Know about the commercial parts of it. Know about the types of residences, the types of zoning. In other words, get really familiar with your neighborhood from the point of view of the city. How does the city think about your neighborhood? You need to know this because you're going to be talking about this with the city. And yes, your land use maps are going to go away. You might have a neighborhood plan or a community plan with a land use map in it. When the land use, the new land use comes through the city council, it's going to do away with your land use maps in your community and neighborhood plans. Yes?
Vicki, if you go on the city website and you look up the community plans or neighborhood plans, they are currently on there. So once the SHMR plan gets done, will those plans then be taken off of the website?
No, they will
and you will
not.
see
No.
the regional ones?
No, they will not.
They will continue staying on there?
They will continue to be there.
So for South Central Alliance neighborhood plan, currently it was done in 2005. We have been asking for years to revise it because the things don't match what's happening now. What we've been told is that, well, we're going to be changing the land use things, we're going to be changing some of the zoning things there, and it will reflect in your neighborhood plan. Is that true? Is that how it's going to happen? Yes.
I assume so. It hasn't happened yet, so nobody really knows.
Okay.
The regional center, this Midtown Regional Center is, I think it's number 3 on the list of plans that need to get done. They are rushing it, they are pushing it, but there's no precedent. None of the others have been done.
Okay.
Oh gosh.
Becky, I have a question. Just as going to the Midtown meetings and the regional, how are they going to run it then? We have neighborhood association meetings. We talk about our neighborhood. How are they going to blend all of these together at the regional? How do you get an input about a regional center? Are they going to just be like, we still have the associations, we have an elected person on the region? Do they ever talk about how that's going to be?
Okay, well, the way it works with the plans, with putting together the plans, is the planning team is made up of representatives of various and sundry neighborhoods, and as I said, others, stakeholders. that are interested parties. And that is where the majority of the planning is done, under the direction of the city. They lead the meetings. They supply the materials, the AV, all of that. But they also come to your neighborhood association and meet with you and explain what has gone on, more or less. They also supply the visuals and all of that. And there is always, when they're meeting with the neighborhood associations, there's always a give and take. There is a chance to have input from the neighborhood. So they're meeting, they have this one team where all the neighborhoods come together in this center. But then they also have individual neighborhood meetings. And they also have community meetings, which are supposed, are the larger.
I didn't get to the community meetings. I appreciate you bringing that up. That's the one thing that Garrett told me they're going to have to change because they didn't do it well.
No, they didn't.
I hate to pick on San Antonio College, but they planned one of them at San Antonio College in the Student Center. Used to be on the street. It's not on the street anymore. It's in the center of this massive campus, and nobody showed up. There were 3 or 4 people from Mahncke Park and a couple others. So they will have to change those community meetings, which are for the community to have input and to go around and talk to the consultants. But that will be one of the changes. There'll be more of them, and they'll be better located to the public.
Yes, ma'am.
This will be a little bit long, but I want to go ahead. The majority of us here are from historical neighborhoods. And right now, we're dealing with this land use. We have a neighborhood plan in our neighborhood of Tobin Hill. They don't care. The land use is out the window right now. We're dealing with developers trying to rezone, which they've already approved one, in the middle of our historic neighborhood.
I know,
For
we have the same problem.
Okay, with a 3-story townhome.
We have the same
So
problem.
we
Exactly.
finally met after this whole thing started back in November of last year, because their developers only been meeting with the board president, which we're dealing with that separately because she now works for an investor. We have over 200 signed petitions from our neighborhood, our residents. We finally had a meeting with our councilman yesterday after months and months and months. And basically, the city's going to do what they want to do. It doesn't matter if you're historic. OHP won't speak to us. So their proposal and their contract with us to be historic means nothing because they're not going to back you.
Well, I will have to defend OHP to a certain extent. OHP does not, its what do you call it? Its rules do not include getting into things like zoning.
But the aesthetics of the property, of the
I understand,
building,
and they do that.
and they haven't.
Well,
We've been trying to deal with that, but the fact is that we as a board can have a group of people that represent the neighborhood, but now they're working with the developer. Well, the entire neighborhood, and we talked about the demographics, the neighborhood right now, we understand about the housing. They want to have available housing at a $200 rate home. Well, we have homes under the $200 rate home, but they want to move those people out to build a brand new $200,000 property. It makes no sense. So we do have gentrification happening because we're right there on Broadway. We're right on Broadway. So the process right now with the city and the district office, they're just looking at him with.
Well, I don't know what the feedback from the your councilman's office was, but my advice to you is the same as Brady's. Don't give up. Keep hammering at the council.
Oh,
Keep
yeah.
hammering at his
He filed an
advisors.
official protest with the city clerk, and he stood
Well,
there and was like, "What did
No,
you do?"
personal, no. go ahead and go through
The process.
the process, but one of my major philosophies is keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. Do not sever ties with the people you disagree with. Do not sever ties with the people who have done something that you feel is wrong. Keep an eye on them, and if they are in positions of authority, or if they are advisors to positions of authority, keep hammering at them. That's my major advice. You just- I'm
Next,
sorry,
go ahead, one more question.
Yes, sir.
Someone else.
Something I totally forgot about, in the west side area,
Yeah.
the neighborhood bond that passed is a big part of it. So it seems that they pass the bond, pass the money, but it doesn't fit the area for what they want the money for. So this land use plan is trying to facilitate developers to go in. I had never seen multi-million-dollar churches in my neighborhood. That was a red flag. The Malt House had one. And when I saw that, I said something's wrong. Because they deal in major projects. But now they're eyeing my area, or our area, because it's our city. So look at the bond, look at what's, where the monies are going in your area. I don't know how spread out the bond money is. But that's one of the signals, and you can see the corridors. Now, here's a neighborhood, a community plan that's in our area, because we didn't have, there was never any money for everyone to get a community plan. So you have Anita Guadalupe Galvin. And then, now to get this is kind of hard, but as things move on, as y'all can see, the community plan was just a little section. But this is a land use plan, trying to get it restrained. So that totally trumps the community plan, which is the community plans were very specific. They were very well done. You had commercial, that's it. You had this, you had that. It was layered in the old days.
Yes.
This stuff, it mixes everything up. And in this case, within that community plan now, I don't think the people wanted 5-story and 8-story buildings. So that's just a little community. So this is the new map that come out. Now, the presentations they do on the community meetings do not show sampling. So the only ones that get to see are the committee members, which is us. So when I see this, I go to community and go, where's the, oh, well, we're trying to bring them up to speed. We're trying to do this, we're trying to do that. But then who's going to take the blame for all this? We are. Even though we jump and scream and yell or whatever, it doesn't matter. So that's what's coming. I mean, please be aware. So there's a lot of homework we all got to do. Look at the bond, look at the papers I said. And that way when you go to these things, maybe we're a lost cause already. I mean, it's like the train at the station and we're on the tracks just waiting for it, you know, with our hands open. But hopefully others in the city will have a chance to really be heard.
Be visible and be at the commission meeting, please, on Wednesday.
Daryl, you had your hand up a couple different times, no?
Well, actually, I do have one
Yes.
quick question. For neighborhoods like Government Hill and parts of Tobin Hill that are historic districts that have been through this process, do you have a sense, I know they give us lip service, I'm from Lavaca, they give us lip service about the historic integrity of the neighborhoods. We have a problem with OHP, frankly. My personal opinion is that OHP is chipping away at the historic integrity of our neighborhood by not enforcing all the things that they are empowered to enforce that don't have anything to do with zoning particularly. And I think that's perhaps setting the stage for then the district being able to sort of be washed away because it no longer has its historic integrity. I'm curious if any of the other historic neighborhoods have had that feeling. Is it something we should look for?
Yeah. I think historic NCD, I think all neighborhoods feel that way. Whether you're historic or not, I think we all feel as if our neighborhood plans are being chipped away.
Historic distribution
Right.
perhaps gives us a little more extra protection.
Right, but I think you have found that not necessarily to be true, and it's one of the things that's kept our neighborhood, which is an NCD, from going historic, because we really don't see the advantage. So, Alex?
Well, Our problem, and I've got a historic in 2 NCDs in my neighborhood, it's the undisciplined Court of Adjustment. People don't get their way, they can go to Court of Adjustment, pay their dues.
Yep.
Court of Adjustment does not follow the UCD. They go from the gut. We feel sorry for people, especially those who did changes without permits, and allow it. And that's right in our area.
We just had that happen in Mahncke Park. We're going to have a 4-story home right across from the golf course. And all the other homes are down here. But the BOA is the one that did it.
Yeah, and I got to the city and they said, well, you can sue in district court. Well, you know, we're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, neighborhoods
That
are
should be our
definitely at the disadvantage. One of the things that, so we sitting here in this group as a coalition, and this is really the place and the method that we can make the most progress. And so staying engaged with the coalition, and then also identifying people that are within the coalition that might have similar issues. So you're talking about historic districts. Everybody should get the contact list. Get in touch with some of those other historic districts. Maybe meet together. See if you can come up with something that you can go to council with. There's been a lot of change in the last 2 years as far as us being vocal and speaking up, and I do think it's having an impact. It's slow and it's reticent, but it's having an impact. Attend, even if you're not on the planning team, those are open to the public. So you can attend those meetings. When staff and the planning team see other public there, that changes the dynamic in the room. Attend as often as possible, even the city council committee meetings. So when you look each week at the Legistar calendar, for example, this Wednesday at 4, the Comp Plan Committee meeting, even though the public doesn't have citizens to be heard there, our presence in the room changes the dynamic in the room. You see some nodding heads. These are people that have made it a habit of trying to attend these meetings. Resources for neighborhoods are difficult. You have enough trouble getting people coming out to your meeting and getting help. It's always the same 5 and 6 people. But keep working on it. Keep trying to get that energy going in your neighborhood. Relationships with your council people. Make a relationship with your planning team leader, your project manager. Meet with that person. Have that person come to your neighborhood
But have them
association.
explain to your association. And I think you've got to, if you see other neighborhood associations, be friends with them and help each other. Tobin Hill, Westport, and Mahncke Park met with Senator Mendez's staff to help us with an issue with streets. And we still haven't solved it, and Minnie hasn't gotten back to us. But we need help, and there's that other avenue we can take to the state. And I don't want the state in everything. They're in everything already.
I just want to mention that I became part of Tier 1 because I'm learning as I'm going. I'm the president of Mission San Jose Neighborhood Association. I'm an artist and educator. My burning house for community involvement was art and education before I got into this development quandrum, you know. And it's just so much. There's so much to learn. And I really, really appreciate Tier 1 giving me that knowledge. I myself have 3 people that I send to different meetings because I can't attend everything. And it's just really crazy to stay on top of everything that's bombarding our communities. I really appreciate Tier 1 constantly keeping me updated. I share that information with my board. We invite people from the city, from all parts, other neighborhood associations that are having problems. We invite them to come to our meetings to educate us because it is a never-ending process of getting information and knowledge and staying empowered with that. But for some of my members, it's really hard for them to use that language because they don't feel confident enough. And so we have like 2 people who feel confident, and I'm sending them all over the place, and it's just really hard to keep up. So thank you so much to Tier 1 for keeping us updated, because I know you guys are everywhere, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
We're stepping it up a little bit. We're working on a newsletter that's just a quick update of meetings and what's going on, and like at the comp meeting, you can't attend, we'll send out a blurb, this is what happened, this is who involved, who, what, where, when, to help further keep neighborhoods involved. I just want to make a case too, in dealing on all of this. We all have, to a certain extent, an adversarial relationship with the city. I mean, the leadership and the culture, not so much with particular staff people who work very hard, but it's difficult and we get frustrated. If you take that with you, and that's the voice they hear all the time, they will shut you out that fast. That voice doesn't work if you want change. You've got to find a way of keeping those emotions in check, and you don't have to be, love fest, but you have to have a relationship with them that's professional, and you have to be persistent. Because what I realize, and they've done it to me, they've done it to everybody in this room probably, who's gotten so angry, that's been the thing with the city, it won't get us anywhere.
Persistence and knowledgeable input to them, keep them informed.
And relationships.
Relationships are
Build those
important in this city.
relationships.
You all know that. This city runs on relationships. Yes. It does.
It's a big, small city still.
Yeah.
Who you know, but be there. Yes,
If you all want to be fortune tellers or psychics of the future, all you have to do is look at Phoenix's history, what happened in the past, and you'll see that everything that happened there, from main plaza, Tobin Center, is coming to us. So you can, I could almost predict this as far as.
And we're not alone.
So,
San Antonio is not alone in these struggles. My hometown is Los Angeles. I keep in touch with what's going on there. The language is the same. The neighborhood complaints are the same. The development is the same. This is a nationwide issue. So don't feel as if we're being picked on or somehow get discouraged by what's happening. Being discouraged only plays into their hand. So do what you can.
I read an article, now that you brought LA up, I can say something to it. They talked about in this, it was a story on planning and what's going on in LA and all of it, a lot of the language we see here. But the point of the article was you still, no matter what, have the neighborhood and people relate to the neighborhood. You talk to somebody from LA, many times, they're not going to tell you where they live. Not in LA, they live in a neighborhood. The neighborhood has that bond, and I think that's true of San Antonio too. We have a bond within our area, and that's our relationship. The city is going to be up here, but we're going to continue on no matter what they may do to us in zoning. Tony?
Oh.
A reminder to have everyone sign in their email.
So we're time is at an end.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Will the nowcast, as when you said of the nowcast?
Yeah, the
Yes.
Nowcast is, we want to thank a couple people.
Yeah, we want to thank Nowcast for doing a great job.
I've got to tell you about Nowcast. Our neighborhood actively supports Nowcast. Nowcast filming different things has saved us. There's times we've said, to the city, you've said this and this, and we didn't say that, we didn't do that. And it's like, I'm sorry to have it on Nowcast. Go to the link, here's where you said it. It's an extremely important, and I hope your neighborhood supports them. Thank you to the Mission San Jose. They provided the coffee and the treats and provided the place for us today. So thank you.
Make sure we have your email address.
Yes. And the last thing is, next time I'm presenting on the one plan to rule them all, or how many city plans does it take to screw in a light bulb? What we find at a lot of meetings is the battle of the plans, and so I'm trying to work through a way for us to understand the plans, because again, the more you walk in with knowledge, the better, but who wins in a battle between the bond plan and the comp plan, or the corridor plan versus the tiers plan. So I'm going to do just give you some information to help you understand what all the plans are, a hierarchy, and how to use them. That will be not next June.
June,
It'll be June.
second week.
Thank you.
I think to remember is, a lot of us have been doing this a lot longer than our council people, their staff, bureaucracy. We know more than they do, and we have to remember that.
That's right.
Don't be afraid to speak up.
That's right. And anybody who'd like to help, I'm going to send out, can I have your attention for one more thing? I'm going to send out the contact list, all the notes for today, but this is not a top-down organization. There's nobody making decisions from the steering committee. We provide education. If you'd like to help with next month's presentation or in some way participate, please do so. This is a space for us to support and advocate and educate. So please don't feel like there's a small group of people doing things. This is us, not, when they say thank you, it's like, no, thank us. So thank you for being here.